I'll try to give some context before I get into the shitstorm. Rachel and I met in college. She was funny, smart, and had this magnetic energy about her. I was head over heels. We got married 2 years after graduation, and life seemed to follow the script. Careers, a home, a kid, everything I thought I wanted. My younger brother Derek has always been a part of our lives. He and I were close growing up, though he's always been a bit of a wild card, more spontaneous and carefree than I ever was. I guess hindsight is 20/20. Looking back, the warning signs were there, but I was too blind to see them. Over the past 6 months, Rachel started to change. At first, it was small things. She was on her phone constantly, and when I asked who she was texting, she'd give me vague answers like, "Just work stuff," or, "My mom's being annoying." She started going out more, girls' nights, errands that took way longer than they should have, trips to the gym where she'd come home freshly showered. Our sex life, which used to be pretty active, slowed down to maybe once a month. And even when we did have sex, it felt off. Like she was just going through the motions. She also started snapping at me for the smallest things. If I asked about her day or offered to help with something, she'd roll her eyes or let out this exasperated sigh like I was the biggest inconvenience in her life. I chalked it up to stress or a rough patch, and I kept telling myself things would get better. But they didn't. They got worse. About a month ago, my brother Derek came to stay with us for a few weeks. He was between apartments and needed a place to crash. I didn't think twice about it. He's my brother. He's family. But once he moved in, things got really weird. Rachel seemed happier. She laughed more, dressed up more, and spent a lot of time in the living room when Derek was there. I even joked once, "You're in a good mood lately. What's the secret?" She just smirked and said, "Maybe you should pay attention more, Evan." I ignored the jab. I was used to her snark by now. Then one evening, everything came crashing down. I came home from work early. Rachel had mentioned taking Lily to her friend's house for a playdate, so the house was quiet. Too quiet. I walked into the living room and saw 2 empty beer bottles on the coffee table. I figured Derek was just hanging out, but something felt off. That's when I heard it. Muffled voices coming from upstairs. I followed the sounds to our bedroom, our fucking bedroom, and the door was slightly ajar. My heart was pounding as I pushed it open, and there they were. Rachel. Naked. Straddling Derek. My brain short-circuited. I felt like I was in a bad dream, but the scene in front of me was horrifyingly real. My wife gasped and jumped off him, grabbing the sheet to cover herself. Derek just sat there, frozen like a deer in headlights. "Evan!" Rachel screamed. "It's not what it looks like!" I couldn't even speak. I just stared at them, my mouth dry, my whole body shaking. Then Derek muttered, "Bro, I'm so sorry." I turned around and walked out. I couldn't breathe. My chest felt like it was going to explode. I heard Rachel chasing after me, still yelling some bullshit about how I didn't understand, and how we could talk about this. I didn't stop. I grabbed my keys and left. That was 3 days ago. I've been staying at a motel, barely sleeping, barely eating. Rachel has been texting and calling nonstop, leaving voicemails alternating between sobbing apologies and furious rants accusing me of overreacting and abandoning the family. Derek hasn't reached out once. I don't know what to do. Part of me wants to burn everything to the ground. Another part of me feels paralyzed. We have a daughter, a life, and I don't know how to move forward from this. I keep thinking, how did I not see this coming? How long has this been going on? Is it possible to recover from this kind of betrayal? I'm lost, Reddit. Any advice would be appreciated. I'll update if anything changes, but right now, I'm just trying to figure out how to pick up the pieces of my shattered life. After a couple of days in the motel, I realized I couldn't avoid Rachel forever. We had Lily to think about, and no matter how much I hated Rachel in that moment, I didn't want to screw things up for our daughter. So, I went back to the house. When I walked in, Rachel was sitting at the kitchen table. Her eyes were puffy from crying, but as soon as she saw me, her face hardened. "Where the hell have you been?" she snapped. "Are you seriously asking me that?" I shot back. "I caught you in our bed with my brother, Rachel. What did you expect me to do? Sit down and have a fucking cup of coffee with you?" She crossed her arms, her jaw clenched. "You're acting like a child, Evan. You're blowing this out of proportion." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Blowing it out of proportion. I felt rage bubbling up inside me. "I caught you cheating, Rachel. With my brother. How the fuck am I overreacting?" She rolled her eyes. "It was a mistake. It just happened. You've been so distant lately, always working, barely paying attention to me. What did you expect me to do?" Her words hit me like a slap. She was blaming me for her affair. Typical Rachel move. She's always been good at twisting things, making everything someone else's fault. I felt my hands trembling, so I shoved them in my pockets to stop myself from punching a hole in the wall. "That's your excuse? I wasn't paying enough attention to you, so you decided to screw my brother?" She didn't say anything, just stared at the floor. Finally, she muttered, "I didn't mean for you to find out like that." The gall of it all. Like that. As if the problem was how I found out, not the fact that it happened at all. I turned to leave, but then I stopped. "What about Lily?" I asked quietly. "What do we tell her?" Rachel looked up, her eyes glistening. "She doesn't need to know. We can work this out. For her." Her voice was trembling, but I could tell she was lying. She didn't want to work it out for Lily. She wanted to keep up appearances. To protect herself. The thought of pretending everything was fine made me want to vomit. "I'm not playing house with you," I said. "I need time to think. And I need you out of my sight." She flared up immediately. "I'm not leaving my house, Evan. If anyone's leaving, it's you." Typical Rachel. Never backing down, never taking responsibility. I left again before I said something I couldn't take back. That night I called Derek. He didn't pick up, so I left a voicemail. "We need to talk. You owe me that much." The next morning, he texted me. "Come to my place. We can talk." I didn't even hesitate. I drove to his shitty apartment on the other side of town. When I knocked on his door, he opened it with a sheepish look on his face, like a kid caught stealing cookies. "Hey, bro," he muttered. "Don't bro me, Derek." I pushed past him and into his apartment. It smelled like stale beer and regret. "How long?" I asked, my voice cold. He looked down at his feet. "A few months." I felt my stomach turn. Months. My brother. My wife. The two people I trusted most in the world. "Why, Derek? How could you do this to me?" He ran a hand through his hair, looking as pathetic as I've ever seen him. "I don't know, man. It just happened. I didn't mean for it to go this far." "You didn't mean for it?" I laughed bitterly. "So what? You tripped and landed in her bed? You've been screwing my wife for months. That's not a mistake. That's a choice." He didn't have an answer. He just stood there, looking like he wanted the earth to swallow him whole. "You're dead to me," I said finally. "I don't have a brother anymore." I turned and walked out, slamming the door behind me. I barely made it to my car before I broke down. I'm not ashamed to admit it. I cried like a fucking baby. I spent the rest of the day in a daze, driving aimlessly. I couldn't go back to the motel, and I sure as hell couldn't go home. Finally, I ended up at my friend Mike's place. He's one of the few people I trust. I told him everything, and he let me crash on his couch. Then, late that night, I got a text from an unknown number. Evan, you don't know me, but you need to know something. Rachel and Derek aren't just screwing around. It's worse than that. Call me. My heart nearly stopped. I stared at the message, my mind racing. Who the hell was this? And how could things possibly be worse than they already were? I took a deep breath and called the number. A woman's voice answered on the first ring. This is Emily. Derek's ex-girlfriend. We need to talk. After staring at that message for what felt like hours, I finally called Emily. My hands were shaking so badly that I nearly dropped the phone. She answered immediately. Evan? Yeah, it's me, I managed to say. What's going on? What do you know? She took a deep breath. I've been debating whether or not to reach out to you, but you deserve to know the truth. Derek's been screwing around with Rachel for at least a year. A year. A full goddamn year. My stomach lurched, and I had to grip the edge of the table to keep from throwing up. How do you know? I found out a few months ago, Emily said, her voice tight with pain. I saw messages on his phone. He'd been meeting Rachel behind both our backs. At first, I wanted to believe it was a one-time thing, but it wasn't. There were dozens of texts, photos, videos. I confronted him, and he admitted everything. I felt like the walls were closing in. Why didn't you tell me sooner? I didn't know how, she said. I didn't want to believe it. And I didn't want to blow up your life without being absolutely sure. But after I left him, I realized you needed to know. I couldn't keep this secret anymore. I sat there in stunned silence, trying to process what she just told me. My brother. My wife. An affair going on for an entire year, right under my nose. I'm so sorry, Evan, Emily whispered. You didn't deserve this. No, I said, my voice hollow. I didn't. After I hung up, everything started clicking into place. The late nights. The sudden errands. The coldness in our marriage. The way Rachel would light up whenever Derek was around. All the times I blamed myself for our problems, thinking I wasn't being a good enough husband. It was all bullshit. I was married to a liar, and my brother was a backstabbing piece of trash. I spent the night lying awake on Mike's couch, my mind racing. I kept replaying every moment of the past year, every missed sign, every ignored red flag. I felt like an idiot. How could I not see what was happening right in front of me? And then I thought of Lily. My sweet, innocent daughter who had no idea her world was about to shatter. I knew I had to do something, but what? Divorce was the obvious answer, but I wanted more than just legal paperwork. I wanted the truth. I wanted justice. And yeah, I wanted revenge. The next morning, I made some calls. First to a lawyer. Then to a private investigator. I needed concrete proof of the affair if I was going to protect myself and Lily in the divorce. I also decided I wasn't going to confront Rachel again until I had everything lined up. I wanted to see how far she would go with her lies, how long she would keep up the charade. In the meantime, I moved into the guest room at Mike's place. He's been a lifesaver through all this. He even offered to let me stay as long as I needed, no questions asked. Everyone needs a friend like Mike. A few days later, Rachel called me. I hadn't heard from her since our last fight, and I almost didn't pick up. But curiosity got the better of me. Evan, she said, her voice soft and sweet. The voice she used when she wanted something. Can we please talk? I miss you. Lily misses you. I clenched my jaw. You want to talk now? After everything? She sighed. Look, I made a mistake. I know I hurt you, but we can fix this. We can go to counseling, start fresh. For Lily's sake. The audacity of this woman. Are you seriously asking me to forgive you? Yes, she said, her voice trembling. I still love you, Evan. You're my husband. We can get past this. A cold rage settled in my chest. She was still lying. Still pretending she gave a damn about our marriage. I decided to play along. Okay. Let's meet and talk. She sounded relieved. Thank you. Can you come home tonight? Yeah, I said. I'll be there. But I had no intention of talking. I had something else in mind. I spent the afternoon gathering my thoughts and talking things through with Mike. He didn't think going back to the house was a good idea. Honestly, part of me agreed. But I couldn't let Rachel continue to manipulate me. I needed to look her in the eyes and see if she'd have the guts to lie to my face one last time. Before I went home, I sent a message to the private investigator I'd hired. I'm confronting her tonight. If you have anything new, send it over. Within minutes, my phone buzzed with an email attachment. New photos. Fresh evidence of Rachel and Derek meeting up just 2 nights ago. My brother sneaking into my house after I left. Rachel letting him in like it was the most normal thing in the world. I felt sick, but also determined. This was the final nail in the coffin. I arrived at the house around 7 p.m. The place looked the same, but it felt like a haunted house, a shell of what it used to be. Rachel was in the living room, sitting on the couch with a glass of wine. She was dressed up, like she was expecting a romantic evening. Hey, she said softly, giving me a tentative smile. I'm glad you came. I stayed by the doorway, my arms crossed. Let's talk then. She patted the spot next to her. Sit down, Evan. No, I'm good right here. My voice was cold. Go ahead. Talk. She sighed, setting the wine glass on the coffee table. I know you're hurt. I know I made a mistake. But we can work through this. You, me, and Lily, we can still be a family. I stared at her, trying to keep my composure. You still think this was just a mistake? Yes, she insisted, her eyes welling up with fake tears. It didn't mean anything. It just happened. I was lonely, you were distant. I never wanted to hurt you. I took a deep breath. You're lying. Her face twisted. Evan, I'm not. I pulled out my phone and opened the photos the investigator had sent. I turned the screen toward her. Explain this, Rachel. 2 nights ago. You and Derek. In our house. After you told me you wanted to fix things. Her face went pale. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. I watched her struggle, her mind racing for an excuse, a way out. But there was none. You're disgusting. I spat. You've been screwing my brother for a year. A whole goddamn year, Rachel. And you still have the audacity to sit here and lie to me. She finally snapped. The tears disappeared, replaced by that cold, defiant look I knew too well. So what? You weren't giving me what I needed, Evan. Derek was there for me when you weren't. I laughed bitterly. You're blaming me again? You're unbelievable. It's not all my fault, she shouted. You buried yourself in work. You stopped caring about me. I shook my head. I was working to give us a good life. To give Lily a good life. And you repaid me by screwing my brother behind my back. She glared at me, her jaw set. What do you want, Evan? You want me to beg? Fine. I'm sorry. But I'm not leaving this house. And I'm not losing Lily. I stepped back, the weight of her words sinking in. She wasn't sorry. Not really. She was just sorry she got caught. Well, guess what? I said. You already lost me. And as for Lily, we'll see about that. Her eyes widened. You wouldn't dare try to take her from me. I leaned in, my voice low and deadly. Watch me. I didn't stay to argue. I walked out, feeling a strange mix of rage, sadness, and relief. I was done with Rachel. Whatever love I had left for her had been burned away. Now, all that mattered was protecting Lily and getting out of this mess. As I drove back to Mike's place, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Derek. "I'm sorry, man. Please, let's talk." I didn't reply. He wasn't worth it. That night, I started writing down everything I could remember: dates, incidents, anything that would help my lawyer build a solid case for custody. I wasn't going to let Rachel's selfishness ruin Lily's life any more than it already had. The next morning, I got another call from Emily, Derek's ex. "I know this is probably a bad time," she said, "but I thought you should know something else. Derek's been seeing someone else, too." "What?" I asked, stunned. "Who?" She hesitated. "A girl he met at his gym. I think Rachel has no idea." It hit me then. Derek was just as much a liar to Rachel as he was to me. The betrayal cut both ways. A plan started forming in my mind. Maybe there was a way to expose them both, to show Rachel exactly what kind of man she threw everything away for. After my call with Emily, I knew I had to act. Rachel had destroyed our marriage, but she still thought she held all the cards. She was confident she'd get the house, custody of Lily, and leave me scrambling. But knowing Derek was cheating on her? That changed the game. She deserved to see exactly who she threw her life away for. I met up with Emily at a small coffee shop downtown. She looked exhausted, like she hadn't slept in days. I probably looked the same. "I can't believe this is happening," she said, stirring her coffee absently. "Derek was always a liar, but I never thought he'd betray you like this." "Yeah," I said. "But it's time to end this." We laid out our plan. Emily had screenshots of Derek's messages with the other woman, a girl from his gym named Kara. Some of them were explicit, and some even overlapped with the timeline of his affair with Rachel. It was the kind of proof that would shatter whatever illusion Rachel had left. I wasn't doing this to hurt her out of spite. Okay, maybe a little bit of spite. But mostly, I needed her to see the truth. If we were going to go through a divorce and custody battle, I needed her to understand that she wasn't the victim here. She was just as much a fool as I was. I decided to confront them together. Emily agreed to help. We planned it for Saturday afternoon. Rachel had texted me, asking if I'd come by to talk about next steps, for Lily's sake. I agreed and told her I'd bring Derek along since we all need to sort this out. She didn't suspect a thing. That Saturday, I picked up Derek from his apartment. He was still trying to play the remorseful brother. "Thanks for giving me a chance to talk, man," he said quietly as he got in the car. "I just want to make this right." I didn't respond. My jaw was clenched so tightly I thought my teeth might crack. We pulled into the driveway, and Rachel was waiting by the door. She had that hopeful look on her face, like she thought I was about to forgive her. Delusion really is a hell of a drug. We all went inside. The air was thick with tension. "So," Rachel started, clasping her hands together, "I'm glad we're doing this. For Lily. We need to move forward." "Yeah," I said, my voice cold. "Moving forward sounds good." Derek shifted uncomfortably. He knew something was off. I turned to Rachel. "Before we talk about moving forward, there's something you need to know." Her smile faltered. "What?" I pulled out my phone and handed it to her. "Scroll through those messages." She frowned and took the phone. As she started reading, her face went pale. "What the hell is this?" she whispered. Derek leaned over to look. "What's going on?" "These are messages between you and some girl named Kara," Rachel said, her voice shaking. "You've been screwing around with her, too." Derek's face turned red. "Rachel, it's not what you think." "Not what I think," she snapped, her voice rising. "You've been cheating on me this whole time?" I crossed my arms. So, what was that about me being distant and not giving you what you needed, Rachel? Looks like you weren't enough for Derek either. Her eyes shot daggers at me. You did this on purpose. You planned this. Damn right I did, I said. I wanted you to see the truth. You threw away our marriage for a guy who couldn't even stay faithful to you. She turned on Derek, her face twisted with rage. How could you do this to me? He stammered. Rachel, I was confused. We didn't mean for any of this to happen. I laughed bitterly. That's your go-to excuse, huh? It just happened? Looks like you've both been living in the same fantasy. Rachel's face crumpled, and for a moment, I thought she might actually feel remorse. But then she straightened up, her eyes cold and hard. Get out, both of you, she hissed. Derek looked at me, desperate. Evan, come on, man. Save it, I snapped. We're done here. I left the house, feeling a strange sense of relief. The confrontation didn't fix everything, but at least the lies were out in the open. Rachel couldn't play the victim anymore. She couldn't blame me for her choices. Derek didn't try to contact me again. I guess even he realized there was no coming back from this. That night, I went back to Mike's place and sat on the porch, staring at the sunset. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe. I wasn't sure what the future held, but I knew one thing. I was done being manipulated. Done being lied to. From now on, it was about protecting Lily and rebuilding my life. The divorce papers are being filed next week. My lawyer says I have a good shot at getting primary custody. I'll fight for it with everything I have. After the confrontation, I wasted no time getting the divorce process underway. My lawyer, Lisa, was sharp and didn't sugarcoat things. I told her everything, handed over the evidence from the private investigator, the screenshots, and even the messages Emily gave me. This is solid, Lisa said, flipping through the files. The court will take a dim view of infidelity, especially with your brother involved. This strengthens your case for primary custody of Lily. That was the only thing keeping me going, the thought of protecting Lily. Rachel had already shattered my life, but I wasn't going to let her ruin my daughter's life, too. Lisa filed the papers, citing adultery as the reason for the divorce. She also filed for temporary custody, requesting that Rachel have supervised visitation due to her volatile behavior during the confrontation. A part of me felt guilty about taking such a hard stance, but then I reminded myself who I was dealing with. Rachel wasn't the woman I thought I'd married. She was a stranger now, someone capable of betrayal I hadn't thought possible. When Rachel got served with the divorce papers, I was at Mike's place. I knew it wouldn't take long for the storm to hit, and I wasn't wrong. My phone started blowing up within minutes. First, the text. You bastard! How could you do this to me? You're trying to take Lily away from me? You'll regret this. I won't let you win, Evan. Then came the calls. I ignored the first few, but eventually I answered, my stomach in knots. Her voice was a venomous mix of rage and desperation. You really think you're going to take Lily from me? You're delusional. I'm doing what's best for her, I said, keeping my voice steady. She doesn't need to be around your lies and toxicity. I'm the toxic one? She screamed. You're the one destroying this family. You did that all by yourself, Rachel, I snapped. You and Derek. You have no one to blame but yourselves. There was a long pause. Then she lowered her voice, her tone dripping with bitterness. You'll regret this, Evan. You'll see. I hung up, my hands trembling. Mike clapped me on the shoulder. You did the right thing, man. Don't let her get in your head. But her words haunted me. I knew Rachel wouldn't go down without a fight. A day later, I got an unexpected text from Derek. I hadn't heard from him since the confrontation, and I wasn't exactly eager to. But his message stopped me cold. We need to talk. There's something you don't know. It's about Rachel. I almost deleted it. I didn't want any more of his bullshit. But curiosity, or maybe a twisted sense of duty, made me reply. Fine. Meet me at the park by Mom's old place. 1 hour. When I got there, Derek was already sitting on a bench, looking like hell. He had bags under his eyes and a defeated slump to his shoulders. I stayed standing. Say what you need to say. He didn't look up. I screwed up. I know that. But Rachel, she's not who you think she is. I scoffed. Yeah, no shit, Derek. He shook his head. No, I mean there's more. She was seeing someone else. Even while she was with me. I froze. What? He finally met my eyes, and for once, I saw genuine regret there. I found out a week before you did. She was using me, Evan. I think she was using both of us. I confronted her, and she laughed in my face. Said she was just having fun. I felt like the ground was slipping out from under me. Who's the other guy? I don't know, he admitted. But she made it clear that neither of us mattered to her. I turned away, my mind spinning. So Rachel hadn't just betrayed me with Derek, she'd been playing him, too. The depth of her deception was staggering. I felt a sickening mix of relief and disgust. Why are you telling me this now? I asked. He shrugged. Because you deserve to know the whole truth. And because... I'm sorry. For everything. I didn't reply. There was nothing left to say. I walked away, leaving Derek sitting alone on the bench. Whatever apology he thought he owed me didn't matter. He'd made his choices, and now he had to live with them. That night, I sat in Mike's living room, staring at the wall. The pieces of my life were scattered, and I didn't know how to put them back together. But one thing was clear, I needed to get through this for Lily. She was the only good thing left in all this chaos. I made a promise to myself. No more looking back. No more trying to understand Rachel's twisted motives or Derek's betrayal. I had to focus on the future, on rebuilding a life for me and my daughter. The divorce was moving forward. The custody battle was looming. But for the first time in weeks, I felt a spark of hope. Maybe, just maybe, there was a way out of this darkness. After Derek's bombshell revelation, I tried to keep my focus on the divorce and the custody battle for my daughter, Lily. My lawyer, Lisa, was confident we had a solid case. The evidence of Rachel's affair, the photos, the messages, it was all in our favor. I felt like I was finally clawing back some control over my life. Rachel, surprisingly, went quiet. No more texts. No more calls. It was unnerving. The silence felt like a trap being set, but I couldn't figure out what she was planning. I took some comfort in the routine at Mike's place. He's been a rock through all this. I'd wake up, have coffee, go to work, and try to keep things as normal as possible for Lily during our visits. She didn't know the full extent of what was happening, just that Daddy and Mommy were taking some time apart. She'd smile at me, completely unaware of the chaos swirling around her. That smile kept me going. But in the back of my mind, I knew the storm wasn't over. I found out what Rachel had been up to when Lisa called me one morning. "Evan, we have a problem," she said, her voice tight. "Rachel's lawyer just filed a motion claiming you are unfit for custody." My stomach dropped. "What? On what grounds?" "She's claiming emotional instability, potential violence, and a toxic environment for Lily." I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. "That's insane! I've never hurt anyone. I've been nothing but careful around Lily." "She's playing dirty," Lisa said. "It's not uncommon in cases like this. We'll fight it, but you need to be prepared. They might try to dig up anything they can to paint you in a bad light." I was furious. After everything she had done, I was the one being painted as unfit? The sheer hypocrisy made my blood boil. She's trying to break you, Lisa continued. Don't let her. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. I won't. But inside, I felt like I was unraveling. I spent the next few days walking on eggshells, terrified that anything I did could be twisted against me. I avoided going to the house, avoided Rachel completely. I was trying to play it safe. Then, one evening while I was at Mike's, there was a knock at the door. Mike opened it, and standing there were 2 police officers. Evan Turner? One of them asked. I stepped forward, my heart pounding. Yeah, that's me. We need you to come with us, the officer said. There's been a report of domestic disturbance and a potential threat against your wife. My jaw dropped. What? That's not true. I haven't even seen her. Mike jumped in. Officers, there has to be a mistake. He's been here all evening. But they didn't care. You'll have a chance to explain everything down at the station. I was too stunned to argue. I let them cuff me, my mind racing. As they led me out to the squad car, I saw Rachel standing across the street, arms crossed, a smug smile on her face. It was a setup. She was trying to destroy me. At the station, I gave my statement. I told them everything, the affair, the divorce, the custody battle, and how I hadn't seen Rachel in days. Thankfully, Mike backed me up, swearing I'd been with him all evening. After a few hours, they let me go. There wasn't enough evidence to hold me, and Rachel's story started falling apart under scrutiny. But the damage was done. The accusation was now part of the record, and I knew Rachel would use it to poison the custody case. When I got back to Mike's place, I felt defeated. She was willing to burn everything down just to win. This wasn't about Lily. It was about control. About revenge. The next morning, I got a call from an unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something told me to answer. Evan? A familiar voice said. It's Emily. Derek's ex. Hey, I said, rubbing my eyes. What's up? I heard what happened, she said. Rachel's out of control. And I have something that might help you. What do you mean? She hesitated. Remember I told you Derek was seeing another woman? Well, I did some digging. Turns out Rachel knew about it, and she was blackmailing Derek to keep quiet. My mind spun. Wait, blackmailing him how? She found out about some illegal stuff Derek was involved in. I have the proof, messages, photos. If you can use this to show the court that Rachel's willing to lie, manipulate, and even commit crimes to get her way, it could help your case. I could barely believe what I was hearing. Emily, this could change everything. She sighed. I hope it does. You don't deserve this, Evan. And neither does Lily. I took the evidence straight to Lisa. She pored over the messages and nodded slowly. This is huge. If we present this to the court, it could completely destroy Rachel's credibility. For the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe this nightmare was finally about to turn in my favor. After Emily gave me the proof of Rachel blackmailing Derek, I met with my lawyer, Lisa. She was confident this could blow Rachel's case out of the water. This isn't just about infidelity anymore, Lisa said. This shows a pattern of manipulation, deceit, and criminal behavior. No judge is going to look kindly on this. We filed the evidence with the court, attaching all the screenshots and photos. Lisa made sure to highlight the parts where Rachel threatened to expose Derek's illegal dealings unless he kept quiet about her other affair. It painted a crystal-clear picture. Rachel wasn't just a cheater, she was a manipulative, vindictive person willing to ruin lives to protect her own image. The court date was set. My stomach was in knots, but I knew we were ready. For the first time since this nightmare started, I felt like I had the upper hand. When the day finally came, I walked into the courtroom with Lisa by my side. Rachel was already there, sitting with her lawyer. She looked calm, almost smug. Like she thought she was about to wipe the floor with me. But I noticed her confidence waver when she saw me. Maybe it was the fact that I wasn't crumbling. Maybe it was the fact that I looked her in the eye without flinching. The proceedings started, and Rachel's lawyer wasted no time pushing the narrative that I was unstable, unfit to be a full-time father. They brought up the police report from her false accusation, twisting it into something sinister. I clenched my fists under the table, but Lisa just gave me a nod. Wait for it, her eyes seemed to say. When it was our turn, Lisa stood up, cool and composed. Your Honor, the claims made against my client are not only false but are part of a broader, documented pattern of manipulation and deceit. She handed the judge the file with all the evidence Emily had provided. This evidence shows that Mrs. Turner has been blackmailing Mr. Derek Turner, coercing him into silence about her multiple infidelities. The same pattern of manipulation is being used against my client to distort the facts of this custody case. Rachel's face went white. Her lawyer fumbled, trying to object, but the judge held up a hand. He spent several minutes going through the screenshots, his face growing darker with every page. When he finally looked up, his expression was cold. Mrs. Turner, this evidence is deeply troubling. It undermines your credibility and calls into question your fitness as a custodial parent. Rachel opened her mouth, then closed it. For the first time, she looked truly afraid. After a brief recess, the judge delivered his decision. He granted me primary custody of Lily. Rachel would get supervised visitation until she could prove she was capable of providing a stable environment. I felt tears well up in my eyes. I'd won. Lily was safe. Rachel broke down in the courtroom. She screamed at the judge, at me, at her lawyer. Security had to escort her out. Derek didn't even show up. I guess he finally realized the mess he was in and decided to lay low. Good riddance. That night, I picked up Lily from Mike's place. She hugged me tightly, her little arms wrapped around my neck. Are we going home, Daddy? She asked. Yeah, sweetheart, I whispered. We're going home. It felt surreal, walking back into the house. The place still smelled like memories of a life that no longer existed. But it was our home now. Mine and Lily's. A fresh start. Reflection. This whole ordeal has been a brutal, soul-crushing experience. I lost my wife, my brother, and a part of myself I'll never get back. But in the end, I held on to the most important thing, my daughter. If there's one thing I've learned through all this, it's that people can surprise you, sometimes in the worst ways, but sometimes in the best. Mike, Lisa, Emily, they had my back when I needed it most. As for Rachel and Derek, they're out of my life. I don't know if they'll ever find their way out of the mess they created. And honestly, I don't care. I'm focused on healing, on rebuilding. On being the best dad I can be for Lily. After the court granted me primary custody of Lily and restricted Rachel to supervised visitation, things started to stabilize. For the first time in months, I wasn't living in constant anxiety, wondering what fresh hell was waiting around the corner. Lily and I got into a routine. I took her to school, helped her with her homework, and we spent our evenings watching cartoons or playing games. There was something healing about those quiet moments. Her laughter started to feel like a balm on my battered soul. Rachel didn't take the verdict well. After her meltdown in court, she went radio silent. I heard through mutual friends that she'd been spiraling, drinking more, and bouncing between short-term jobs. Derek, on the other hand, seemed to disappear entirely. Last I heard, he left town to start over, which was fine by me. The less I knew about him, the better. About 3 weeks after the court decision, I got a call from an unknown number while I was at work. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something told me to answer. Hello? A shaky voice came through the line. Evan, it's me. Rachel. I hadn't heard her voice since that day in court. My stomach twisted, but I kept my voice steady. What do you want, Rachel? She took a deep breath. I need help. I didn't say anything. What was I supposed to say to that? I know I messed up, she continued, her voice breaking. I've lost everything. My job, my reputation, my relationship with Lily. I'm a wreck, Evan. I don't know what to do. Her words didn't spark the anger I expected. Instead, there was just a hollow sadness. This was the woman I once loved, the mother of my child. She'd destroyed our life, but now she was the one crumbling under the weight of it. I don't know how to fix any of this, she whispered. I just want to see Lily. Please, can you help me? I thought about hanging up. I thought about telling her to deal with the consequences of her actions. But then I thought about Lily. She still loved her mom, no matter what Rachel had done. And I didn't want my daughter to grow up without knowing I'd at least tried to help her mother. Rachel, I said slowly, you need to get your life together. If you want to be in Lily's life, you need to show me, and the court, that you can be stable. Get counseling. Get help. And prove to me you're serious about this. She let out a choked sob. Okay. I will. Thank you, Evan. I mean it. I hung up, feeling conflicted. I wasn't doing it for her. I was doing it for Lily. Rachel started therapy and attended a few supervised visits with Lily. I kept a close eye on things, making sure Lily was safe and comfortable. So far, Rachel's trying. I'm not holding my breath for a miraculous turnaround, but I'm hopeful she can at least be a decent mother. As for me, I'm focusing on healing. Mike's been there every step of the way, and Emily, Derek's ex, and I have stayed in touch. We've both been through the same hell, and having someone who understands has been invaluable. I'm not rushing into anything new. For now, my priority is Lily and rebuilding my life. There are good days and bad days, but each day feels a little lighter. I'm learning to trust myself again, to believe that there's still hope for happiness, even after betrayal.